This is Between the Brackets, a Mediawiki podcast, episode 64, July 7th, 2020. Hello, I'm Yaron Koren, and welcome to BTB Digest, the Between the Brackets installment for the busy Mediawiki enthusiast on the go, or on the stay if you're listening to this anytime in mid-2020. If you're listening to this after the global lockdown has already ended, I hope you're outside or traveling to somewhere or going to a bar or something. Savor your freedoms. Anyway, I wanted to mention my book, Working with Mediawiki. It first came out in 2012, and I've updated it every 2 or 3 years since then. And the latest update, which is the 4th, just came out about a month ago. It's the only real Mediawiki reference book in existence, and I put a lot of work into it, so I hope people like it. You can check it out by going to workingwithmediawiki.com. The entire book is there online, so you can read it all for free, but there are also links to order the book, and I hope you do, either for yourself or for that special Mediawiki enthusiast in your life. There's nothing like a printed book with nice margins for putting in notes or what have you. Anyway, on to the clips. Back in March, I talked to Ad Strak van Schijndel, who runs the successful Dutch Mediawiki consulting company Wikibase Solutions. Ad is his first name and Strak van Schijndel is his last name, and as I told him at the time, he has the shortest first name and longest last name of anyone I know, although I'm sure he's heard that a lot. And it should be noted that this Wikibase is unrelated to Wikibase, the software that powers Wikidata. Anyway, for this first clip, I asked Ad about how he got started with Mediawiki, and I got the surprising answer that it wasn't related to business or a personal hobby, but rather because he ran for office.
In 2005, 2006, that's actually when it all started. I went in local politics, and one evening I asked my son, I said, well, if I go into local politics, I want some kind of Wikipedia for our municipality. And could you have a look how that could be done? So Bram is his name. He arranged that. He downloaded Mediawiki and put it on the same website site as our website, or on the same server. He installed it there. And that evening we created the first articles for Oosterhout. So it was oosterhout.wikilocal.nl, and that's when it started in 2006.
Yeah, okay.
But of course, soon I discovered that it was very not user friendly. So when a colleague said to me, well, you should have a look. You should really have a look at Semantic Mediawiki and Semantic Forms. I think he mentioned at the same time. And that's when things started to get interesting. Yeah. And that's when I said, that was a Capgemini, a colleague from Capgemini, and that's when I started doing things within Capgemini. And I think that must have been around, 2008. So like you said.
Yeah, I
12,
see. Okay.
12.
Okay. Yeah. The timing works out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, so when you said you went into local politics, that sometimes mean you were planning to run for office, or you just mean you were interested in politics?
Well, it was very local, because a guy in the street where I live, he was in the city council, and there were going to be elections in 2006, and he was planning to have his own local party, and he asked me if I wanted to join him. So I did.
Okay. Yeah.
And in 2006 we had only one seat in the council, so that was. But in 2010 we went to 4 seats. So then I've been in the city council from then until 2 years ago, 2018.
Next, I talked to Evita Hollis, who manages the wiki at General Electric. GE might be the biggest company or organization that runs an internal Mediawiki installation, and Evita runs a whole team that helps manage their wiki. There are a number of interesting aspects to their setup, one of which is that they run both Mediawiki and Microsoft SharePoint. We in the Enterprise Mediawiki community sometimes consider SharePoint the enemy, but in the case of GE, the two coexist well, apparently. I asked Avita how they decide which content goes into which system, and that led to a bigger discussion about their overall setup.
So I would say it's always like a debate on which one it should go in. But when I advise people, I'd say if it's a Word document or if it's like a PowerPoint, you should always convert that to a wiki article. It's easier for people to find it in our wiki. SharePoint is able to crawl the wiki, so you can find everything in the wiki. If it's a 100-page guideline or standards, we wouldn't convert that. We would just put that in SharePoint and link to it from a wiki article or something like that. So it's really those quick nuggets of information. It should go into the wiki. But if it's something very robust in detail and have some kind of access requirement for it, it should go in SharePoint. SharePoint is much better at handling access down to the granular level of individual people where the wiki can't.
Right.
So documents like that, you put in the SharePoint and you can link to them from the wiki. But that's how I kind of describe the difference.
Yeah. Okay.
When to use wiki versus when to use SharePoint.
Yeah, but okay. So it's not that there's some one department that puts their information in SharePoint or that kind of thing. Actually, I should ask. Well, SharePoint has its own wiki capability. I guess you're not using that.
Yeah, we're not using it at all.
Yeah. So that's very interesting. The whole idea that you're trying to get people to move stuff from Word documents, PowerPoint, all that into the wiki. Have you noticed a change in people's habits? Are people instinctively creating Word documents less than they were before, or is it just a hard habit to break for people?
It's definitely a hard habit to break for people. One of the things that we're doing to encourage this, because one of the biggest complaint is that they just don't want to learn how to use a different tool. You got visual editors there; it helps them with the editing and creating, but it's still not as great as using a Word document. Okay, it's not as easy as using a Word, especially because you can insert a picture and things like that. Where the wiki, you have to like upload it and have all these different things. So that's a barrier. New people, that's a barrier. So one of the things we're trying to do to encourage it is remove that barrier. So it's like, okay, well, you have this Word document. Why don't you send it to our Wiki as a Service team? We will convert it for you and move it into the wiki. So we have seen uptake in that, where I believe last year we may have had about, I think a little bit over 100 requests, and that 100 requests resulted into several hundred articles, because one request may consist of 5 or 100. Actually, we've had a request that had just the site. Here, take this whole site. They got rid of a whole site of Word documents, and we wanted them to convert into the wiki. So taking away that barrier of them having to learn the technology, because my focus is not getting everybody to create or to actually create using the wiki. My focus is to get people to start using what's in the wiki. And we need content in the wiki for people to use what's in the wiki.
After that, I talked to Duncan Crane, who works for the Financial Conduct Authority in the United Kingdom. Duncan's episode was really the first post-lockdown episode, and when I talked to him, he was happily working from home, as were pretty much all of us, at least those of us lucky enough to still be employed. Here's Duncan talking about how they decided to set up a wiki and the general benefits of a wiki when doing government work.
I've got this team of people, and what happens is, somebody goes on holiday and something happens on one of these projects, and if they haven't sort of documented anything, then nobody knows what's going on. So we thought, we'll have the wiki and use that as a way of documenting stuff, but also we then started using it as a sort of little workflow system, so we can sort of set up tasks within the wiki and attach documents to those tasks and record what happens from those tasks.
Right.
You can imagine we attend a lot of meetings, And so frequently somebody will prepare a paper for a meeting for discussion, and then we'll pass some commentary on that. What are the risks that need to be thought about in terms of that decision? Then they'll have the meeting and they'll take a decision. And what we're trying to do is capture that information so people understand that in the future.
Right.
The trouble is, I don't know if you worked in government at all, but one of the big problems is you're accountable, so people can come along often years later and ask for information, or you might be called before a government committee to explain why you did a certain thing if the outcome hasn't been good, and therefore you need that record of what happened. And a wiki is a great tool for doing that, because it allows you to capture information in lots of different ways. And if you use tools like page forms or cargo or semantic Mediawiki, then it allows you to start giving some meaning to that data and then reporting on it or retrieving it in flexible ways that really make it a lot more useful. Before that, some of these projects, so if you took we recently finished one called MiFID II, Markets in Financial Instruments 2. That lasted 7 years as a project. It produced something like over 10,000 different documents in its lifetime. There were hundreds of consultations with industry and responses, and we needed a way of putting an umbrella over all of that information so people can actually find stuff in it and sort of get to the important stuff without having to necessarily trawl through thousands and thousands of sort of Word documents or Excel documents that are dotted all over a sort of cloud storage cover somewhere. And so we use the wiki as a way of sort of putting an umbrella over all of that lot, so it's a lot easier to find and trace stuff through it.
In May, I talked to Amir Haroni, who is a strategist in the language team at the Wikimedia Foundation. Amir is known as a big advocate for support for non-English languages and non-European languages more generally. I asked Amir where in the world there was the biggest gap between supply of content in people's native languages and demand for content in those languages, and here's what he said.
Pretty much all of Africa, except the Arabic language.
Right.
Obviously, quite a lot of people in African countries also know English or French, but definitely not everybody. Definitely not everybody. And that's, when you come as a tourist to an African country, you get the feeling that everybody knows English because you know English and you speak to other people in English.
Sure.
But you just don't speak to other people who don't know English. But in most African countries, most people don't know English. And pretty much all the Wikipedias in languages of Africa are extremely small, with much fewer than 10,000 articles, often fewer than 1,000 articles, which is sad. One of the things that I'm trying to do as part of my role is finding ways to get this to grow. It's very challenging, but we're not giving up on that. And some of these languages are spoken by many millions of people.
Right.
Literally today, I found a few languages. I was going over some lists of people who speak some languages in some countries, and I found languages that are spoken by more than 1 million people, and I've only heard about them today for the first time.
Oh wow!
And I am famous for being very interested in this, and even I haven't heard of them until today. So and millions and millions of people who cannot read Wikipedia in any language, because if they only know one language and the Wikipedia in that language is too small or doesn't even exist, then they don't have Wikipedia. That's the digital divide in a very real sense.
In my discussion with Amir, we also got into some technical issues about internationalization. Here he is talking about his idea for turning all wiki links on Wikipedia into Wikidata links, which would show up as just regular links for those entities that have an article in that language and would show up as something else for entities that don't have an article.
I totally understand what is great about the wiki link in square brackets. I guess I don't guess, it's just true. It was very convenient and simple to use such a thing when Wikipedia started. It was easier than typing less than a space href equals blah blah blah.
Right.
Greater than blah blah blah. It was obviously easier, especially in English. English is a language that doesn't have a lot of morphology. Words don't change a lot. But in other languages, it starts getting trickier because other languages have a lot of morphology. Words change a lot. In Hebrew, it happens. In Russian, it happens. In languages of India, it happens a lot. So you have to use the pipe much more than in English.
I see.
And this is not even the largest problem. Much bigger problems are that if you don't have an article about something in your language, and this could even be English, but there is such an article in another language, or there is some information about this topic in Wikidata, linking to, like making a red link, it doesn't help you. It doesn't give you anything. It just gives you a link to an empty page. So you can click on the red link and you can write the page. But it's kind of sad that an article about the same topic exists in another language. And to a lot of people, an article in another language is at least marginally more useful than a blank page.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Or like some generic tabular data in Wikidata could be more useful than a blank page. So integrating links, like integrating Wikidata items with links in some smart way that wouldn't piss off people who really love the simple links in square brackets, which is pretty much everybody, that would be a nice idea. How to actually do this, it would probably be very complicated. But yeah, I mean, you can see that people want this from the fact that quite a lot of Wikipedias have a template that does something like this, where you can link to, like, you use a template to link to a Wikidata item when the article doesn't exist. But then this raises the question: when do you use this template, and when do you use the link? And when the article gets written, then who will remove the template and replace it with the usual link, and so on.
Right.
So these are kind of like patchy solutions, and they're different in every language. And why couldn't we just maybe do some kind of a sweeping, big thought process and change it? And again, it's a fantasy. It's a huge change, but it tries to solve a real problem, and maybe the actual solution to this problem will be something completely different. But at least I'm trying to point out the problem.
And for the final episode in this recap, I talked to Will Cavanaugh, also known as Mr. Woodhouse, who is the global community lead for the company Fandom, previously known as Wikia. Fandom is the biggest wiki farm in the world by far, and actually one of the most popular websites of any kind in the world, so everything there is on a bigger scale. They have a lot of perks for their most active editors, like tickets to movie premieres, free video games, that kind of thing. Giving perks to editors is something that people have considered at various wikis, public and private, but one reservation people have is the fear that people will deliberately try to game the system, as it's known. I asked Will about how Fandom avoids that problem.
We've seen that concern, and certainly with some of our gamification features, especially on Gamepedia, which has a pretty robust achievement system. We've seen people gaming for achievements, which makes sense because, that's been such a successful carrot in the gaming world, with Xbox and PlayStation and now Steam all having, robust achievement systems. But we look more at their holistic contributions and look at the quality of what they're providing rather than the quantity. Anyone can set up a bot to change the spacing on every article, and say, oh, hey, I should be editor of the month.
Right.
But when we get down to the nitty gritty and we see that you have 50,000 edits in the past month and all of them are under 7 bytes, it's like, well, we're going to dig in on some of those edits. So we're really looking to the people that aren't just editing, but they're making a positive impact on their community. So somebody might not be the most prolific editor, but they're a great leader, or they're a great admin, or they help out on one of our spam prevention teams, or they've developed a really cool bot that helps other wiki teams to keep track of vandalism through Discord and other services like that. Our first editor of the year on Gamepedia actually works for us now because he developed incredible tools on his own that helped people to access wikis in new ways.
Fandom has a lot of custom code and features, which is something that's the focus of a current major project of theirs, UCP, or the United Community Platform, which is a project that involves upgrading Mediawiki and making their installation more standard, like getting rid of all their local changes to core Mediawiki. One notable aspect of the fandom interface that's different from regular Mediawiki is their custom tools for communication between users. There are 4 main ones: forums, discussion, message wall, and article comments. I asked Will to explain the 4.
So forums is exactly what it sounds like. It's a pretty traditional message board. Folks that are kind of the older internet generation will recognize them as pretty early internet design with boards and topics and threads and whole
Right.
9 yards. Discussions is a more modern version of that kind of same use case. Living in a social media world with a little bit more rich content rather than being text focused. We developed it ourselves, and it lives separately from Mediawiki, so it's we can update it without having to touch the core wiki code base, which is nice.
Yeah.
Message wall is pretty much exactly what you would see on Facebook. It's on your profile, it's your wall, people go and they leave you a message and other people can interact with it. So it's a great user-to-user communication tool, especially for moderation. So if somebody is not conforming to your community rules, you can go and give them a warning on their message wall and they'll get a notification for it.
Yeah, okay. And that replaces the core Mediawiki talk pages?
It does. But we allow communities to toggle it off if they'd like to return to the core talk page experience.
Yeah, okay.
And then article comments lives on individual article pages. It basically allows you to have a lot of the same discussions that you'd be having on an article talk page, but within the page itself, down at the bottom. And so it acts similar to what you would see on a blog, where you have those discus comments at the bottom.
Right, yeah. Or news articles and that kind of thing.
Exactly. And it allows you to have a threaded conversation similar to that, and people can, discuss the content of the article. They can provide suggestions for improvements. They can, debate some of the claims that are made, debate the sources that are being used. In some communities, we've seen that article comments ends up being, almost like a mini forum, dedicated to that particular topic that's covered on the page.
Right.
So, we look a lot at some of the unique use cases that people have when we're, making changes to these features.
And that's it for this 10th installment of BTB Digest. If you liked any of the clips, check out the longer interviews they came from. There's good stuff in each one of them. And again, if you want to read a Mediawiki reference book that's had a lot of work and thought put into it, go to workingwithmediawiki.com. Anyway, stay productive, everyone, and I'll see you next time.